All right, y'all, we have quite a fight here for everybody. We have Donald Trump and Brian Kemp. Brian Kemp is the governor of Georgia, and he was on the Trump train. He was super hardcore pro-Trump, but their relationship soured. Their relationship soured when Brian Kemp refused to try to not certify the election or decertify the election or turn it over to Trump, even though Joe Biden won. Now remember, this is a guy who on the policies is 100% with Trump. He loved Trump. He agrees with Trump on virtually everything. He's a hardcore Republican. I remember covering some of his ads back in the day when he was running against Stacey Abrams, and they were hilarious. He was like the stereotype of the modern day Republican. But it was a bridge too far to ask him to like decertify the election or rig the election or just give it to Trump when Joe Biden won. And so he split with Trump on that. Now, as a result of that, Trump has viciously turned on him. And he's been very vocal about that fact. Well, now Governor Kemp is taking on Trump, and it looks like, low-key, he's sort of winning. So let's watch this.
We're in a fight for the soul of our state.
Georgia Governor Brian Kemp is also facing another fight for the future of the Republican Party.
We need to win and win big on Tuesday. And then we will unite and do what we have done again, and that is beat Stacey Abrams in November.
The next big stop of the midterm election season is the Georgia primary on Tuesday.
Good to see y'all.
Kemp is trying to project strength by looking ahead to a potential rematch with Stacey Abrams. But long before that, he must overcome vicious criticism from the loudest voice in the Republican Party.
Brian Kemp is a turncoat, he's a coward, and he's a complete and total disaster.
Georgia has...
This is what Trump does. If you disagree with him on one thing, he will stab you in the back and twist the knife and use terminology like that. It's really astonishing. He did it to Pence, too, when Pence was so loyal to him every step of the way. The only thing Pence said he couldn't do was overturn a Democratic election. And Trump was like, unforgivable, disloyal. This guy, man, massive cult of personality and absolute authoritarian dictatorial instincts. There's no denying that.
It's been the object of Donald Trump's obsession since narrowly losing the state in 2020. He's never forgiven Kemp and other GOP officials for refusing to meddle in the election.
Brian Kemp, he sold you out. He didn't look. He didn't want to look. He didn't want anything to do with it.
Trump can...
Again, he views personal loyalty to him as the highest virtue. Even if what he's asking you to do is immoral, unethical, unconstitutional, illegal, horrendous, he doesn't care. Do what I say. That's it. That's all Trump cares about. I mean, this isn't breaking news for people, but it's just amazing to see it in such a stark, clear way. He's attacking a guy who agrees with him on every policy issue and was super loyal to him. But he wouldn't meddle in the election and overturn his state for Trump by lying. And so Trump's like, now you're the enemy.
Former Senator David Perdue to challenge Kemp, a bet that is now looking increasingly risky. 60% of Republican primary voters support Kemp, according to a new Fox News poll, while 28% back Perdue, a healthy increase in the governor's advantage since March.
So do you understand that? Trump has been on the warpath against Kemp, calling him out in virtually every single one of his rallies, backing Perdue to the max. Perdue was a big name in Republican politics. And Perdue is getting draxed. Kemp is winning by a lot, and his lead is growing. What does that tell you? Look, it tells you what I've been warning you about for the longest time. Trump is a viable candidate for 2024. He's the favorite on the Republican side. In some polls, he's even the favorite over Joe Biden in 2024. Donald Trump has one massive Achilles heel. That Achilles heel is he cannot stop self-destructing over the 2020 election. Calling it rigged, leaning into the stop the steal stuff, going to the fringiest of fringe conspiracy theories, things that have been proven wrong, demonstrably so, over and over again. And so his main line of attack against Kemp is just that. You didn't overturn the election. And Republican base voters see through that attack and they're like, how about you shut up? And also, I do think there's a state versus national level thing going on here, where Georgia Republicans view themselves as Georgia Republicans, and they think, Kemp's our guy, and now you're fucking with our guy, and we don't like that. So, wow, Trump holding a massive L on this, man, a massive L on this. And by the way, the Perdue campaign has stopped spending now in the lead up to the election. They're not even running any TV ads. They're kind of waving the white flag, dog.
Gone are the days when Trump, Perdue, and Kemp were all part of a unified Republican family. Deep divisions, rooted in the big election lie, are now at the heart of the Georgia primary.
So what I'm frustrated with is that we can't get our Republican leaders to investigate. They say, well, we've audited, we looked at all that. They have not. They have not done that.
So what's Perdue doing? Perdue is campaigning and leading into the election was rigged, the election was rigged, the election was rigged, and Republican-based voters in Georgia are like, we don't really care what you're saying about this. Move on. Get over it. Biden's president.
Rallies.
They attacked and cheated on our elections, and they did it right here in Georgia also.
And in TV ads.
Brian Kemp let us down. We can't let it happen again.
Trump blames others for his defeat.
President Trump has called you a turncoat, a coward. What do you say to Georgians who are making up their mind right now, whether if they should listen to him or listen to you?
I would tell Georgians I can't control what other people are saying. They want somebody who's fighting for them. They're not worried about people from around the country that have been criticizing us.
Kemp goes to great lengths to ignore the criticism. Some supporters do not.
President Trump has a lot to say about a lot of things, but the best person to unite Georgia is Governor Kemp.
He needs to get a Band-Aid and put it over his lips.
A Band-Aid over his lips?
Yeah. He needs to learn to control his speech. And I am a Trump supporter all the way.
As he flirts with another presidential run.
Wow. People who are pro-Trump are like, you're being ridiculous. And we like this guy Kemp. So you can shut up. Wow. Look, we've gone over the results of all the various elections where Trump has endorsed one candidate over another. And I think he's like maybe 60% of the time or 70% of the time at most, Trump's candidates are winning. But that means that 30 or 40% of the time they're not. And in this instance, Trump's candidate is getting obliterated. So his iron grip on the Republican Party is not as iron as many people may think. And in some instances, it looks like the opposite. Like this guy, Kemp, has the iron grip on the Georgia Republican voters, and Trump does not. By the way, how does this bode for 2024 in a primary in Georgia? Let's say Trump's running against, I don't know, Pence or DeSantis. And Pence is backing Kemp, by the way. Maybe it's a state where Trump wouldn't win the Republican primary in Georgia. Maybe. So, in other words, the point I'm making is, in many instances, he is sort of like Teflon Don. But we're starting to see some cracks in that Teflon, man, and this is a great example of it right here.
Trump has plenty reasons to keep Georgia on his mind. He endorsed Congressman Jody Hice to challenge Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger, who also declined to help Trump overturn the election. He's supporting former football great Herschel Walker for Senate. Those two Republicans, along with Perdue, make up the Trump ticket.
We first have to defeat the rhino sellouts and the losers in the primaries this spring.
Rhino sellouts and the losers. This guy.
The biggest question of all is whether Republicans will come together after the divisive primary.
After all that President Trump has said about you, if you win on Tuesday, will you seek his endorsement to help unify the party?
Look, the only endorsement I'm worried about is the people of Georgia's on Tuesday.
Wow.
Now,
Kemp is sort of masterfully navigating this situation where the biggest name in Republican politics is trying to slit his throat, and he's still leading, and he's handling it like a jiu-jitsu master dog. Got to keep it real. Got to keep it real on that. It's kind of fascinating to see. And you know what it reminds me of? The Glenn Youngkin model. Glenn Youngkin beat Terry McAuliffe. What did Glenn Youngkin do? Well, Terry McAuliffe ran a horrible campaign. He followed Youngkin down the culture war rabbit hole, and he ran his whole campaign on Trump's really bad. Glenn Youngkin neither seeked out Trump's approval, endorsement, support, and also didn't attack him. He sort of walked that middle ground, and that middle ground led to him winning in Virginia. And what you're seeing here from Kemp is he's sort of doing the same thing. Even though Trump's going after him relentlessly, he's dodging and bobbing and weaving, and he's not attacking Trump, but he's saying, look, I can only control what I do and say, and bottom line is I'm looking out for the people of Georgia. And he's winning. Wow.
Kemp is not only campaigning hard to win, he's trying to get more than 50%. That would allow him to avoid a June runoff election. One thing he's doing on the eve of the election, bringing in former Vice President Mike Pence to campaign for him. Anderson, it's the biggest split yet with Pence and former President Trump.
Yeah, they hate each other now because the one thing Pence wouldn't do, Trump turned on him over that. Really interesting development, man. Really interesting development. But now, again, let me reiterate as the final point here. Don't get it twisted. Kemp is exactly like Trump on all the policies. The only thing he wouldn't do was overturn a Democratic election, which is good, but it's like the lowest bar of all time. So ghouls are going to be ghouls, goblins are going to be goblins, and that's the main thrust of the story, even though In this race, Trump is a more nefarious force, Perdue is more nefarious, but Kemp looks like he's hanging on and he's probably going to win by a sizable margin. Ever since Adpocalypse, when YouTube defunded all independent news and politics overnight, we haven't trusted them. We know they can pull the rug out from underneath us at any time. If you enjoy this content, please consider tipping $1 or $2 per month on the Secular Talk Patreon. Link in the video description box below. Thanks for your support.